Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can see me, and you'll notice I am not in the UK at the moment. The palm trees kind of give it away, don't they? I am currently out in Spain working with a student of mine, but that does not mean that I am stopping with our lessons. Now, these lessons, they're going to be happening all the way through Easter. So don't worry if you're watching this on recording, if you're catching up because you've been at school during the first week, that's absolutely fine. They are there so that you can spend a little bit of time every single day, because at the Education Hotel, we really do believe in little and often. So being able to work on something for a short amount of time and then to be able to go off, do something else, and then come back and do something that is also academic. Now, today's topic is really useful for not just 11 plus, but people who are taking SATs, foundation skills, and it's all about fractions, decimals, and percentages. So, if you joined me yesterday, you will notice that I had put up a worksheet on our page, and I'll just show you the page. Here we are. So you can see that the page over here will show you, here we are, the homework that we've got, these two sheets. It doesn't matter if you haven't done them, but if you're watching on recording, stop for me, go back and give them a try, because I'm going to be going over the answers right now. If you have done them, perfect, because that is what we're going to be discussing. So we are going to be looking at fractions, decimals, and percentages. Now, there's some tips and techniques in there as well. There's some little things that might help you to speed up, that might help you to check your working. So it's not just about going through this sheet and saying, yep, I got it right, but did I make a guess? Did I actually work it out? Did I sense check it for myself? Was there a way for me to make it even quicker? So let's head over to our fractions, decimals, and percentages. I've set up so that we can have a quick look at fractions, decimals, and percentages, because the topic itself starts off seeming quite simple. We all know what a fraction might look like. We all know what a decimal looks like, and we all hopefully know what a percentage. So here's an example of our fraction. Here's a decimal, and here's the percentage. But in turning between the two, that's when it can start to get a little bit tricky. So, equivalent fractions. These are the fact that a quarter also equals 0.25, also equals 25%. There are a number of those that, as you go through maths, will become more and more familiar until eventually you've almost learnt them. Now, I would say something like a quarter, a half, 3/4, they should be the clear ones, but a third's worth knowing, an eighth's worth knowing. And how do we go between these? Now, different people have different ways, but for me, what I would like to do, if I want to turn a fraction to a percentage, I can simply times by 100. I can do that. Or I can turn it into a decimal, and then I can turn my decimal by 100. I can do that as well. And how would I do that? I would do 1.00. I would divide it by 4. 4's into 1, doesn't go. 4's into 10. So if I bring my 0 down there, 4's into 10 go twice. That makes 8. 10 minus 8 gives me 2. Bring that other 0 down. 4's into 20 give me 5. Can we see we've got the decimal? Now, it's something that's worth practicing. I can do these fairly quickly. You should also be able to do these fairly quickly. You also should be able to look at this. If you get something that's a decimal, that's 1 point, then your fraction's got to be bigger than 1. And your percentage has got to be bigger than 100 because you've got a whole plus something else. So you want to become familiar with seeing, that fraction is 1.5. I'm expecting my decimal to be 1 point something. Or I've got a percentage that is around 75%. I'm expecting a decimal that is around 0.7 something. And that starts to help you when you see questions and you think you've got the answer, just to do a little bit of a sense check. Okay, now let's get a little bit further into our questions. And as I said, on these questions, we've set you them, you've got access to them, you can have them on the worksheet. I'll put the worksheet link into our YouTube link so you can see that as well. But I'm going to go through how we would do some of this. Okay, so that you can see, okay, I'm doing the same thing that someone else is doing, or this is maybe a quicker way to do it. So first of all, what is 1/2 of 3/4? I've written that so that it's a little bit confusing. They've got words in it, there's fractions in it. It looks a bit horrible. So the first thing that I do, I rewrite. And there is my 1/2 and there is my 3/4. It looks a lot nicer. I can see them. The second thing I'm going to pay attention to is the language. Okay, it says of. And I know that in maths, of means times. So there is my sum. Those of you that are familiar with multiplying fractions will know that we times the top, we times the bottom, and then we can cancel. Depends on if it needs it, but we'll see. We can also cross cancel. So for those of you that are used to a bow tie method of cancelling, we can do that as well. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to times across and then I'm going to cancel. So 1 times 3 is going to give me 3. 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. I can't cancel there, but I have got my answer. Okay, I'm always going to do it so that you can see the fraction. Okay, I'm going to make sure that you can see it, but I'm pretty sure you can. I'm always going to do this so that you can see. All right, if you can see the answer, then it makes it really easy to go back to check your own work and to see, yes, I got that too. All right, convert 25% into a fraction in its simplest form. Fraction is key, simplest form is key, and 25% is key. Now, it's one of those fractions that I would expect you to know. So this should be a really easy one. It should be 1/4. If you're anything other than 1/4, you need to go back and you need to go through your equivalent fractions. Quarters, thirds, halves, 3/4, eighths, ideally. And probably a 1/6. But a 1/6 is similar to a 1/3. So you might find that kind of useful. Okay. Then we've got a jacket costs £60. It is on sale with 20% off. What is the sale price? You've got to be careful. Because if they'd said it was in the sale as £60, this would be a whole different question. But there's a little bit of a trick here. If I look down my answers, I can see they are all less than 60. So I know that £60 was its original price and it is now in the sale with 20% off. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. I'm going to show you both. The first one you can do is find 20% of 60. Remember, of means times. We could talk about it in a percentage, no fraction, sorry. 20 over 100 times that by 60 over 1. That is finding 20% of it. I can do some cross cancelling. Get rid. I could also just times across and cancel down. I'm not going to. I'm still going to cancel over there, and that tells me £12. £12 is 20% off. I have to be careful because it didn't ask me what was £20, 20% of it. It asked me to take 20% off. So I would then need to take my £12 away from my 60. That is the first way that I could do it. there is another way. If you did another way, then that's perfectly fine. There is another way. The other way is that we do 60 and we find 80%. Because if we took 20% off, then we are left with 80%. I can do the same cancelling. Cancel across, cancel across. I'm just dividing by 10. Cancel, cancel. And then I could do 6 times 8. Now, regardless of how we've done this, there is a little tiny check that I want you to be aware of. Here's my 12. Let's say, and I know that none of you may have this issue, but I've come across people who do. Okay, let's say we see the 12, we see the 60, and we panic. We think, oh, I don't know how to do it. Okay, only one of those answers ends in the right number. So all you need to do is look for the number that it ends in. We know that 6 8s are 48, and I know that 60 minus 12 is 48, but I don't even need to get to the 4, because I know that if it ends in an 8, that is my answer. There's only one of those that ends in an 8, and that is the one that I'm looking for. Okay, so in my sense check, I can say, okay, 48 plus 12, make sure it goes back to 60. That way I haven't made up the answer, I haven't guessed the answer, I'm still doing a sense check. All right. The class has 24 students. There's an important piece of information. 3/4 of them bought their lunch. How many students bought lunch? Okay, again, I know in maths what I am wanting. I'm wanting 3/4 of 24, which is 3/4 times 24. Okay, so again, I'm going to set out my sum. There we are, times it by 24 over 1. And again, I could cancel. I can times across and I can cancel. Now, you might be saying, Gemma, you teach maths. Why are you writing all this working down? I am writing this working down because I teach maths. No other reason. If I write my working, then if I go back and I've got time and I'm checking through and I see 60, 12 and a minus, and I see my answer as 48, I immediately know I'm right. If I can see my timesing, I can check it. I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and lose more time. Loads of people say, oh, but writing the working takes too much time. It doesn't. It helps future you. Future you's coming back and checking, and they have to read the whole question again, and then they have to write the whole sum again, and then they have to do the sum. It's not worth it. But if future you can see exactly what you did, then it's really easy to check. Okay. So I can cancel here. 4, and I know that 6 4s are 24. 3 times 6 gives me 18. There's a lot of C's. And I want you to be aware that sometimes if you're doing a multiple choice exam, there are a lot of the same letter. Don't think, oh, well, this one was C, and the last question was C, and the question before that was C, so maybe this isn't C. No, it's not the way exam writers think. They don't think, oh, we're not going to put a run of the same letter in. No, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. If you are correct in your working, then you put your answer down. Okay? Don't think, oh, but the last answer doesn't matter. Okay? Right, on to the next one. So, our baker made 200 cupcakes. God, that'd be a lot of cupcakes. It'd fill my whole table. I could eat cupcakes for months. That'd be great. Okay, if he sold 35% of them, how many cupcakes remain? Now, I want you to think there's a really key word in there. Tell me what it is. Now, if you said remain, that's the one I want you to look at. Because this remain is telling us We're not interested in how many cupcakes were sold. I'm interested with how many cupcakes are still on the baker's table. Not my table, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be eating them all. But how many are left? So I can do two methods. I can do 200. I can find 35%, like so. And then I can minus it from 200 to find out how many remain, like this. And I can cancel, isn't it lovely that there's zeros and zeros? I can double 35 and I get 70. Now remember, that was the 35%. So I can't go and put down 70 as much as I want to, because I see the answer and I think, yes, I've done it. But I haven't. I must remember to take it away from 200. So I can take my zeros, I can do 20 minus 7, and that gives me 13. Another C. Or if you were thinking about some of the previous questions and you're thinking, and I know a different way to do this, all right, then we could do 100%, which is our full amount, minus the 35. And I'm just going to have to borrow from the 10 there. Make a 9, put that into there, 5, 10 minus 5. And I've got 9 minus 3, which gives me 65. I can find 65% of 200 because that is the percentage of cupcakes that are left on the baker's table, which is 200 over 1 times by 65 over 100. And again, I can absolutely cancel across using that bow tie method. And I can double my 65. Double 5 gives me 10. Double 6 gives me 12, plus the 1 gives me that 130 again. Now, sometimes in these classes, I show you multiple methods. And I show you multiple methods so that you can use them to check. Sometimes it might be that one method is quicker for you, but it's not for everybody. It can be different for different people. And you can also use both methods. If you've tried the first method and made a little tiny error, I'd recommend using the different method when you come to check. Because if you use the same one, you're likely to make the same mistakes. So instead, try and use a different method to use a check. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I get this, okay? I think I might need a bit more help. Now, don't worry, because next weekend we are doing exam technique masterclasses. They have questions a bit like this, but all across different subjects, different topics, within maths or within English. And we go over how to tackle a paper as well. And the paper is really important because we're starting, if you're in year 5 and you're starting to prep for 11 plus and you're starting to do the papers, you've reached that point to start doing papers, you will notice that timing matters, checking matters, knowing where to check matters. And that's the type of thing we cover. All right. You'll always see what we can offer by going back to that free 11 plus classes page, which I'll pop in the chat. Okay, right. Let's keep going though. Tick 2 numbers equivalent to a quarter. Now, this is where everyone knows it, but so many people will lose marks. Do you know why? Oh, look, 0.25. I know that. That's equivalent to a quarter. Done. Move on. It said tick 2 numbers. Sometimes when we're reading a question, we've got to be really careful that we stick to the instructions, that we don't rush, that we don't move on, because otherwise you're going to lose that mark. It's an easy mark. And sometimes you're that's too easy. I'm not going to do that. But you can't rush it. You absolutely must pay attention to all the words, because if you miss that it said 2 numbers, you've lost that easy mark. Okay, let's move on to this one. A cat sleeps for 12 hours a day. It sleeps for half of its life. Okay, I know that there are 24 hours in a day. So 12 over 24, and it sleeps for half of its life. Okay, and I can see that. I can see that that is 50%. Or if I cancel that down, I can divide by 2. Gives me 6. Divide by 2 gives me 12. I can divide again. Divide by 3 gives me 2. Divide by 3 gives me 4. And I can divide again. Like that. Or you might have noticed right away, oh, those are the 12 times tables. Or at this point, you might have noticed, oh, that's the 6 times table. So it doesn't matter. You eventually get to a half. And that's what the question says. Okay, it's 12 hours a day. It's half of its life. That is 12 out of 24. A gecko sleeps for 18 hours of life. What percentage of its life is it asleep? Okay, so I'm looking at 18 out of 24. It doesn't immediately look like a fraction I'm used to. It doesn't look like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. It must be this answer. But I can work it out. I can look here and I can either find the highest number that I can think of that will go into this, or I can start with a small number like I did over here. So I can immediately see 6 goes into both these numbers. But if you didn't, if you just thought, oh, the only thing I can see is 2, you can absolutely do 2. Because if you divide by 2, you end up with half of 18 is 9, half of 12 is half of 24 is 12. You might see it then. You might not. You might say, oh, well, I can see 3 maybe that goes into that. And 9 divides by 3 to give me 3. 12 divides by 3 to give me 4. And 3/4, now there's a fraction I know. That's 75%. Okay. So even if you don't right at the start see the highest number that you can divide by, you can get to the answer. And if you are quick at your multiple tables, your times tables, then it doesn't matter if you don't find the highest common factor, because you can easily cancel down. Okay, last question. And this is the last question that was on our worksheet that we gave you in the 11 plus documents. So once I'm finished here, I'll be putting another worksheet up, and then you can do that next worksheet for tomorrow when you come back and see me. Okay. So here's our last one. We've got what percentage of people liked both tea and coffee. So there's 3 people that like tea. We've got 9 people that like coffee. We've got 18 people that like both and 20 people that don't like either. And that's what each of those numbers mean. And we're looking for the ones that liked both tea and coffee. So that's this one right here. So I know I've got 18. Now, it can be very confusing. I kind of want to put 18 down as my answer, and that it's in the multiple choice. So surely that's the right answer. Because I like to think of this as the exam trying to trick me. It's thrown in a red herring. Because I see the 18, I put 18, I think, oh, 18%, done, quick, move on. No. Now, we were looking for the percentage of people that both liked tea and coffee. And that is true. There are 18 people who like it. But 18 out of how many is actually our question. So as a fraction, how many people were there? What's my denominator? Now I can see by just looking at this, that my denominator is not 100. So I'm not looking at 18 out of 100. I'm looking at 18 out of something, and I need to find out what that something is. Okay, so 20, I've got 18, I've got 9, and I've got 3. Now you can just use a long addition like this, kind of a simple addition where you add these all up. You can also start to think about them in pairs. I know that that's sometimes a bit of an odd one, but sometimes I do this with pupils just to speed it up a little bit. If you struggle because there's an 8, there's a 9 and a 3, and putting them together is just a little bit tricky, your 9 plus 3 will give you 12. You can think about 12 plus 18 again. So I've just condensed these down to a 12, put on the 18. 12 plus 18 is going to give me a 0. That's 3, 30. And then 30 plus 20 gives me 50. So all I'm doing there is I'm removing the 9 and the 3. I've replaced it with 12. I've done 12 plus 18 to get rid of those, rid of the units, gives me 30, and then I've added the 20 on. If that's confusing, stick with the addition. So add 9 to 8 to 3, which will give you that. And you will put an additional 2 that you carry over because it gives you 20, and then add it in. That tells us our denominator. And, oh, it's a lovely denominator. It's 50. All I need to do is double to get me to 100. If I've got it over 100, I've got my percentage. So I'm going to double both of those. There we are. Times by 2. Do the same to the bottom that I'm going to do to the top. And if I double 8, I get 2 8s is 16, carry the 1. And if I double the 1, I get 2 plus that 1 gives me 3. And there's my answer, 36. So I didn't end up with 18%. I ended up with 36. Okay, guys. So that's our short little lesson for today. As I said, it's for 11 plus, but it's for SATs as well. It's for foundation work. Okay. If you're interested, if you think, oh, yes, this is really working, go back. Okay. Go back to the free 11 pluses, and I'm going to put the next worksheet up. Those of you that have had a look will also see that when it updates, there'll be an extra paper in there. And that paper is what we're going to be starting to look at over Friday. So we're going to take that paper and I'm going to pick out some questions, some really tricky ones to go over on Friday. So if you can do that as well, that would be great. But if not, focus on the work that is being put up next. Okay. Thank you for joining me, whether it is on replay, whether it is on live, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.